the Cheeto Dust Killer. February 9th, 2006. A witness watches a man in Taylorsville, Utah hold a bottle of Coke and a bag of Cheetos as he talks to 29-year-old Sonia Medja outside of her apartment. Suddenly, the man smacks Sonia hard on the head and forces both of them into the apartment. When Sonia's husband comes home, he finds the man's food outside the door. Inside the apartment, he finds Sonia stripped nude and strangled to death on the bed, and her body covered in Cheeto dust. Let's fast forward to February 9th, the same day, but a year later and only a mile away from the previous crime. An unknown man breaks into the apartment of Damiana Castillo and smothers her with a pillow. The investigators compared the two crimes and matched the DNA to the same man. Unfortunately, the judge has sealed the case, so the verdict is unknown. But what we do know is that police found the man who we call...
I'm really freaking out and I need to know if I'm overreacting. I think somebody did something to my butt while I was grocery shopping.
So this woman named Jessica went grocery shopping at Kroger's in Farmington, Michigan, and the entire time she was in the store, she noticed this young man constantly around her. Whenever she went to a new aisle, he was always there. At first, she didn't think much of it and thought maybe he was just shopping around, but the entire time he was holding one item in one hand and his phone in his other hand. At this point, her gut is telling her that something is off, and let me tell you, whenever you do have that gut feeling, you're almost always right. So she's finally ready to check out, and there's a woman in front of her. So as she's waiting, all of a sudden she feels this wet thing on her bottom back. So she feels it with her hand and she's looking around at the ceiling, on the floor, to see if there was some sort of leak in the ceiling, but there was no leak. But she does notice that same man around her, and this time he's making eye contact with her and he seems to be recording her as well. So she leaves the store, she's freaking out, she makes this video on TikTok, it goes viral, and everyone's like, if that's what we're all thinking that this is, then that's considered assault. Jessica then contacts the store manager at Kroger's, and then corporate got involved and they looked at the store surveillance, and he was following her around the entire time she was there, and he did in fact do what we're all thinking. So then she files a police report and hands in her shorts with this substance on it, and police are still looking into it. So this is just a friendly reminder that a woman can't even feel safe grocery shopping. Let that sink in. It's so sad to say, but we honestly need to be vigilant at all times, even at a grocery store, apparently.
Of all the things not to do when you're on the run for murder, I'd say going on national TV is top of the list. ITVX's true crime drama, The Pembrokeshire Murders, shows the true story of 4 of Wales' most baffling murders and the crazy way that police finally cracked the case. I used to go on holiday to Pembrokeshire as a child every year, and the murders were unsolved back then, and it used to freak me out so much. My next recommendation is a show that covers the case of Julie Hogg, who disappeared in the 80s. Something horrific is found at the family home that changes everything. Her mum then goes through absolute hell to fight for justice in I Fought the Law. Last but definitely not least, if you haven't heard of this case, get ready for a roller coaster. A quiet farmhouse, 5 family members found dead. White House Farm proves one thing: at a crime scene, question everything. Watch all these and more on ITVX for free.
Disturbing facts that may ruin your day. Brain activity may continue for more than 10 minutes after you've died. Research suggests that even when you're unconscious, you can still feel touches from your loved ones and hear yourself pronounced dead. There are over 200 bodies on Mount Everest, and climbers commonly use them as trail markers. If the sun were to explode, we wouldn't know for about 8 minutes and 20 seconds. Real human skeletons were used in the 1982 film Poltergeist. Cast and crew were not aware of this until they had actually finished filming. Climate change is making wolf spiders around the world bigger. 2 Scottish surgeons originally invented the chainsaw in order to assist with childbirth.
3 facts that could save your life, part 6. If you ever find yourself stranded on a beach somewhere, try and stay as dry and warm as possible, gathering supplies before it gets dark, to of course make a fire. People don't realize that as soon as the sun goes down, it gets extremely cold on those waterfronts, and you can more or less die of hypothermia actually pretty quickly. If you ever find yourself hiking in needing of water, don't ever eat the snow. Eating the extremely cold snow while being extremely cold can actually give your body internal hypothermia, unaliving you actually pretty fast. If you're ever walking to your car and it's extremely dark outside, make sure you have your keys in your hand. If an intruder or someone comes near you to bother you, you can sound the alarm of your car, more or less scaring them off or getting at least somebody else's attention. Like and follow for more.
This woman here says she slept with at least 20 ghosts. Her name is Amethyst Realm, and she once had just a normal human husband, but she says she cheated on him with a ghost, and then went on to say that she's now engaged to an apparition who proposed to her. Now I know love is love, but this is kind of scary.
These are 8 horrifying facts that will probably keep you up at night. 41% of Americans go into medical debt every year. No other developed country even has that concept. Most of the oxygen comes from the oceans, but people are busy talking about protecting trees and not the ocean. Dracula is based on a real person. Paris is romantic, right? What's more romantic than millions of human remains? The catacombs under Paris hold remains of roughly 60 million plague victims. Cockroaches can live without their heads for weeks. You can't die from old age, only from diseases brought on by age. Cannibals find the palm of the hand tastiest. Joke's on them. They don't know where my hand was this morning. Don't think you can outrun a crocodile. Crocodiles can gallop. Yeah, there's a lot more, like for part 13.
Did you know that in the next few years, people may be able to regrow their own teeth? Researchers in Japan might have figured out a drug that will allow people to regrow their own teeth, which is insane. They said that they would be starting their trials this September for 11 months, which will involve 30 males aged 30 to 64, each missing at least one tooth. And if all goes well, the next stage will focus on patients aged 2 to 7 who are missing at least 4 teeth. Now, before testing this drug on people, they have successfully tested on ferrets and mice and said that they've demonstrated positive results with no serious side effects. And they're very confident that this will work on humans. The drug was developed to help a wide range of people, including those with congenital tooth deficiencies and people who have lost their teeth to cavities, injuries, or other environmental factors. And while this is great news for people who are missing teeth, it's been said that this new drug could potentially disrupt the dental industry. Now that people could potentially regrow their own teeth, it reduces the need for traditional dental procedures like implants, dentures, and crowns. If these clinical trials are successful, the drug could become available as early as 2030.
She ruined the lives of 40,000 people. Annie Ducan was a Massachusetts forensic chemist whose misconduct led to one of the biggest crime lab scandals in US history. From 2003 to 2012, she falsified drug test results, dry labbed samples, and tampered with evidence, leading to thousands of wrongful convictions. She also lied about having a master's degree in chemistry. Authorities arrested her in September 2012 at her home in Franklin, Massachusetts. She faced 27 charges, including obstruction of justice and evidence tampering. In 2013, she pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 3 to 5 years in prison, serving 3 before her 2016 release. Her actions led to over 21,000 drug convictions being overturned, but the total number of affected cases has since grown to over 40,000, according to state officials. Investigators found she wasn't motivated by money, but by a desire for recognition, falsifying results to appear more productive. Her scandal cost the state millions in lawsuits, forced forensic reforms, and shattered public trust in the justice system, making her a cautionary example of unchecked power in forensic investigations.
All hands.
Quick message from our youngest daughter. Aubrey wanted to say, you may have received A's in high school and college, but you're going to be getting big D's in prison.
Thank you.
This is the photo of the girl who was turned into a human bodysuit. Yeah, they skinned her. There are real photos of the crime on the internet. I can't show them to you, obviously, but you can Google them. It was a 23-year-old college student who was struggling with depression. She ended up being sent to a psychiatric clinic on November 12th, 1998, but ended up going missing instead. Her mother reported her missing to the authorities and they told her to wait. And if they didn't wait, she might still be with us. And then in January 1999, a couple months later, a tugboat crew found human skin and her leg floating in the water. And initially, people thought this was an accident, but like, how does that become an accident? Like, when you see the photos, that was no accident. But then they kind of realized, oh, someone deliberately removed all of her skin and fashioned it into a bodysuit. Very unfortunately, the case went cold for a really long time. And then in 2014 to 2017, there was a lead. Notice the psychological profile of this guy named Robert J. He had really disturbing tendencies. He worked at a zoology institute where he killed the rabbits with no explanation, and he fit the profile of the perpetrator. But there's no real evidence that says that he did this crime, so they ended up letting him go. Unfortunately, justice has not been served for her yet. Her killer has not been found. And if you want to see the crime scene photos, just Google Katarzyna crime, because they're too disturbing to show here. Over here for more content.
When they entered the apartment, what they found was disturbing. The first thing that they saw was a skinny 4-year-old Benji with 2 big black eyes. But not just that, Benji had bruises all over his body. He also had an injury in his ear, and because of that, he had a gauze just like sticking out of his ear. The officer said that he was very skinny and did not look like a normal 4-year-old. When they asked why did Benji have all these injuries, Miranda and Brandon said that he had behavioral issues and that he would do this to himself. They said that he had a habit of constantly poking his eyes and ears, and that's why it caused those injuries. Then officers decided to bring Benji alone into the bathroom, and they asked him again, what happened to you? Benji said the same thing his parents said and told the officers that he did it to himself and that he poked at his eyes and ears. But when you watch the video, it doesn't sound genuine, and it kind of sounds like Benji was rehearsed and told to say that. They had locks on their fridge, on their kitchen cabinets, and everywhere where there was food. They also noticed a lot of cameras set up in the apartment, especially in the kitchen. From their point of view, it just looked a little bit odd. Why are there so many locks and why is there cameras everywhere? Now, they retrieved all these cameras and began looking at all the footage, and I was not prepared to see what I saw. I think this was one of the saddest videos I've seen in a while. Watching how this boy would sneak out of his room in the middle of the night to look for food, it literally broke my heart. It was said that before Miranda moved into the home, Benji was able to just go in and out of the cabinets and fridge and get whatever he wanted. But then these locks were added and it became more difficult for Benji to get food.
Did you know that in the Universal Studios in Beijing, China, the Jurassic World Adventure ride has the Indominus Rex and it chases you? The video at the end is terrifying. I could never go on this ride in a million years. You see how it has this track here and it actually chases you for like a full 30 seconds. This is what it looks like without skin. It's giving Five Nights at Isla Nublar. Also, when I went to Universal Studios in 2009 in Los Angeles, I got this adorable teddy bear and he has a little Jurassic Park hat and he's holding a velociraptor. Isn't this the cutest thing you've ever seen in your life? But yeah, this animatronic looks extremely realistic, really cool, terrifying. I love dark rides, but I would be terrified to see a massive animatronic chasing me. This is how big its head is in comparison to people. Hate it because of the megalophobia of it. How it works is that it has a different track than the people, you know, and it goes in a circle. Also, he doesn't have feet, so it's kind of goofy, but like with the lights on, it's not as scary. Watch this video and let me know what you're thinking, and would you go on this ride? Honestly, I probably would. I'd just be crying though.
The family of Irina Zarutska, the Ukrainian woman who was fatally stabbed on a train in North Carolina, is speaking out publicly, asking people to stop sharing the footage that has been circulating showing her death. 23-year-old Irina moved from Ukraine to Charlotte, North Carolina. She had been working full-time at a local pizzeria and taking community college classes to improve her English. On August 22nd, she texted her boyfriend that she would be home soon, but she never arrived. And when she didn't come home, loved ones checked her phone location and saw that it was still at a train station. When they arrived at the station, they learned that Irina had been killed on the Blue Line train that she was taking home. DeCarlos Brown Jr. stabbed Irina to death, and there is footage of this from inside the train, but again, her family has asked that it no longer be shared online. Brown was arrested at the state level and charged with first-degree murder, and then he was arrested and charged in federal court with one count of committing an act causing death on a mass transportation system, which is a crime that could land him the death penalty. Now, Irina's family is fighting for change, calling her death the most horrific way to lose a life. In a statement, the family said, quote, "This could have been anyone riding the light rail that night. We are committed to making sure this never happens again." They are calling for a full investigation into, quote, lapses in security protocols and failures within the public transportation system. They are citing a lack of visible or effective security presence on the Blue Line, failure of oversight in the contract between the Charlotte area transit system and professional security system, and the absence of adequate safety measures they believe could have prevented the attack. The family said, "We are heartbroken beyond words. Irina came here to find peace and safety, and instead her life was stolen from her in the most horrific way. No family should have to go through this." So they are fighting for change in the wake of her death so her legacy can live on to help others. Rest in peace, Irina.
Why would you even go here? A man from Indonesia was exploring this abandoned hospital when strange things started happening. Ignoring what he saw, he went deeper in and came across what looked like a person without a head, pushing a wheelchair.
Ancok, matamu itu jelas banget, An. Oh, lah, dikira mati aku,
If that wasn't creepy enough, as he approaches a room, he sees this.
Ancok, matamu.
A demonic-looking woman flips her head back to stare at him. Now, this is most likely not real, but I still wouldn't watch this at night.
Yo, what's up? These are characters in movies or shows based off real-life serial killers, part 1. The Ghostface Killer from Scream. This may come as a surprise to you, but around 1990 in the city of Gainesville, Florida, a string of murders began where college students were being brutally and gruesomely murdered by a perpetrator and killer by the name of Danny Rolling, later known as the Gainesville Ripper. Danny Rolling grew up in a very abusive household, and at the age of 1 is when his abuse began. And once his younger brother was born, well, the abuse just got worse. At the age of 11, Danny's mom was committed to a hospital after slitting her wrists, which then in turn led Danny to a life of alcohol and drug abuse, which only worsened his already fragile mental state. After having gone through all these events, he grew up and then went on to be the Gainesville Ripper, where he would move to decapitate, mutilate, and rape many women from the University of Florida. In the end, he was actually being charged for theft, but then pleaded guilty to the 5 murders, and on his deathbed, he sang a 5-verse hymn before being taken to be executed.
Paintings on the bottom of swimming pools should be illegal. Part 2. Seriously though, why would anybody draw a freaking Jaws shark on the bottom of a swimming pool? Why would you have this done in your own house? Why would you have this to where when it's completely full of water, because it's drained right now, when it's completely full of water, when you look under the water, you see this giant shark? Why? Why would you do that? Like, are you just a glutton for punishment? Like, I don't understand why anyone would do that. I would never go anywhere near these pools that have freaking things drawn on them. What is wrong with you? Like, this is a public pool. This is a public pool, and you are traumatizing children and adults by doing this. Why? This one's kind of goofy looking, but I still would cry if I saw it underwater. You think this one's cute. It's like dolphins, right? But actually dolphins are kind of evil. Did you know that orca whales are actually just giant dolphins that have different colored skin? Did you know that? Like, orcas are just black and white dolphins. And you know how evil they are. So I don't like this either. And the cherry on top, someone put a giant whale eye mosaic in their pool. Why? Don't even get me started on black bottom pools. Who completely decides to make their entire pool tiled with black so it looks like the abyss? Who? Why?
These two interviews from the documentary were taken years apart. So when she's in the pink and she's like, I loved my mom more than anything, and everyone's like, what is wrong with her? She is so blind. This was taken years ago. And then when she walks into frame in the gray hoodie and all the interviews in the gray hoodie were done, that was the most recent version of Lauren that we have. And I also think the fact that she decided to go to college for criminology is so interesting and very telling about where she now stands with the whole situation. And it's like, why wouldn't they disclose this? Why would they just like make us think that these are the same timeline? Because like this documentary is for entertainment purposes at the end of the day. Yes, it's true crime. Yes, this stuff really happened, but they just want to piece together the most entertaining version of the story that they can give us. She's like 18 now. And if you were to watch the documentary with that in mind, it's so clear. So when she's like, I just love my mom and I just want everything to be okay, that's because she's still processing everything going on. And I mean, she literally says while she's in the gray hoodie, I don't want to see my mom while she's in prison. I want to see my mom when the time is right. And she can even admit that it would be really hard to see her, but she would feel more relieved. Like she has a much more clear mindset in these interviews. In this interview, in the younger version of her, she is trauma bonded to her mother. Her mother traumatized her, but at the same time, all she wants is her mom. Here, she's a little more older, she's more mature, she kind of has more clarity on the situation. Let me know what you thought about it and follow for more true crime.
After 130 years, Jack the Ripper may have just been identified through DNA. A historian named Russell Edwards says he has identified Jack the Ripper as Aaron Kosminski through a DNA match of a shawl found at the scene of one of the murders. This is a computer-generated picture of Kosminski, and Edwards has said he has hired a legal team to help gain an inquest after he found a 100% DNA match. Edwards and his team have also sent a letter to the Attorney General requesting permission to go to Britain's High Court for a further inquest. They are doing all of this in the hope that Kosminski can be legally tied to the murder. Jack the Ripper has been a long-standing mystery after he murdered at least 5 women in Whitechapel, England between August and November 1888. He was infamous for cutting the throats of his victims before removing their internal organs. Police never found Jack the Ripper, and his identity has remained a mystery for the last 130 years. There have been many suspects over the years, including one Aaron Kosminski. Kosminski was a Polish immigrant who came to Whitechapel in 1881 along with his brother. He became a barber, and he would have been 23 at the time of the Jack the Ripper murders. Later in life, he suffered from schizophrenia, and he was in a mental asylum at the time of his death in 1919. Edwards said that he came to purchase the shawl in 2007 after it was purported to be at the scene of the murder of Catherine Eddowes. Thanks to Kosminski's oldest brother's great-great-granddaughter, the match was made after they provided a DNA sample. And descendants of both the Eddowes and the Kosminskis have backed the move to further prove if Kosminski was involved. Karen Miller, the great-great-great-granddaughter of Catherine Eddowes, said, quote, "The name Jack the Ripper has become sensationalized. It has gone down in history as this famous character. What about the real name of the person who did this? Having the real person legally named in court, which can consider all the evidence, would be a form of justice for the victims. We have got the proof. Now we need this inquest to legally name the killer." So if this is proven to be true, that the DNA match is accurate and that shawl was connected to the killer, then finally, after more than a century, Jack the Ripper may be identified. This is wild.
They found those 3 kids who have been missing for 4 years after their father went off the grid with them. This is the campsite. This is crazy. I've been following this story for so long. The father was killed in a shootout. I'm sure most of you have heard of this story. The father disappeared with his 3 children back in December of 2021, and they were believed to be living off the grid. They lived in New Zealand, and he did not have custody of the children. I believe it was back in like August or September of 2021. He disappeared with the children for the first time, but then they emerged from the woods after 17 days. 3 months later, before his court date, he disappeared with the children again, and he has been missing with the children ever since. Over the years, they have been spotted, but police have not been able to find them. This is the father in the front with the 3 children behind him. For a while, it was unknown how they were able to survive out in the wilderness. They would have eventually had to run out of supplies and all of that. But they began being spotted on surveillance cameras breaking into convenience stores. In 2023, the father, Tom Phillips, allegedly was wanted for a bank robbery in which one of his children was with him. Reports state that he allegedly shot a member of the public as he fled. I believe the latest sighting was in August of this year, and the father and one of his children were seen attempting to break into another store. Police believe that they may have been staying in this area the whole time. This is a photo provided by BBC News. You can see that is where he disappeared from his parents' home in Maricopa, and then in 2023 there was a sighting around Kauai. Sorry if I said that wrong. This is when the father and children were seen by the pig hunters over here in October of 2024. This is from the burglary in August of 2025 where he is seen on footage with one of the children. Not far from that is where he was shot. On Monday, September 8th, authorities received a call from a local farm business, and that is what led to them tracking down Tom. He did have one of the children with him when authorities showed up, and one of the officers was actually injured due to a GS wound. They are going to require many surgeries but are expected to be okay. Tom ended up being shot. This morning, the child that was with Tom took police to the campsite that they had in the woods. The other children were located. I believe all the children are ages 9, 10, and 12 now. This is such a crazy story, and I'm honestly surprised that they were located. Police are investigating exactly how they managed to survive, like through the cold winters and stuff, and they said they do believe that someone or multiple people were helping them.
This is why you should never explore abandoned places. Around 2007 and 2008, a few teenage friends would often hang out at an old abandoned school. The abandoned school that they would hang out at was very small, with only 8 classrooms, a cafeteria, 2 bathrooms, and a room no one has ever been in due to it being boarded off completely. The school has been abandoned since the 80s, and ever since they had to board up all windows and doors due to people trespassing. Although the school had been completely boarded up, the teenagers found a way to enter through a classroom window where the board was completely ripped off. The teenagers had their own routine where whoever got out of school first would go to the abandoned building and check all the classrooms to make sure it was safe. On this one day, 2 of the friends were the first to get out of school, so as usual, they walked down to the abandoned building. But upon entering and stepping out from the classroom and into the large hallway, the 2 teenage boys had saw a large man. One of the boys let out a loud scream in fear, but the large man didn't seem to be shocked or scared. He didn't even react. A few moments later, the large man turned around and asked the 2 teenage boys if they have seen the exact name of one of their friends. The 2 teenage boys didn't recognize this large man and didn't know how he knew his friend's name, but immediately they hurried out of the building and left. The group of teenagers didn't return back to the abandoned school until about 3 to 4 months later when it was the middle of summer vacation and they thought it would be a good idea to climb to the top of the roof. When they had made it to the top of the roof, they noticed a hole that they haven't seen before, which was about the size of a football. They looked through the hole and didn't recognize a single thing inside of the room. But then they remembered that one room they had never explored because it was completely boarded off, which was most likely the room that they were looking into. To get a better look at the room, they had one of their friends, Amanda, stick her phone into the room and start recording to see what was in there. Immediately after sticking her arm through the hole with their phone to record, Amanda had let out a blood-curdling scream and retracted her arm from the hole, but unfortunately though, she had dropped her phone into the room. Amanda was certain that something had knocked her phone out of her hand, and as they looked down through the hole, they could see her phone just laying on the ground. The group of teenagers immediately entered the abandoned school and went straight to the room where Amanda had dropped her phone into. After about 30 minutes, they finally managed to get the board off of the door that led into the room. They stepped into the room and just stared in silence. To this day, the teenagers have no clue why this room was in a school building and sincerely hope it wasn't used for what it looked like. As they entered the room, they noticed the concrete walls along with 2 metal bowls to the left. In the back of the room, there was 5 dangling chains that looked like it would fit around someone's neck. Needless to say, they picked up Amanda's phone and immediately left the building. The group of teenagers never returned back to that school and still don't know why to this day that room was in there.
One of the many devastating things about this case is that this young girl was sadistically tortured and murdered by someone that she had complete utter trust in, a family member that she had a bond with. This case really shows that you never really know anyone. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Tia Rigg. Tia was the fourth of 7 children born in the lovely Cheetham Hill area of Manchester in January 1998. Unfortunately, she would be born into an unstable environment. Her mother, Lynn Ahmed, struggled with substance abuse. She would get into a string of bad relationships with bad men and was often a victim of domestic violence, something that the children would witness, and the children would also witness Lynn attempting to take her own life. Reports insinuate that this happened more than once. As soon as Tia was born, she was known by social services, and the children of the family would spend many years going on and off the register, under child protection plans, and in and out of Lynn's custody, although the children would always end up back with their mother. It was implied in reporting that care and responsibilities of the younger children would often be left to the older children. In 2010, 12-year-old Tia was a bright and bubbly student at Albion High School. She was described as cheery, happy-go-lucky, she could make her friends laugh effortlessly, and she was a devoted, caring, loving sister. On the 3rd of April, John Maiden, Tia's uncle, rang Lynn asking if Tia could come round to his house to babysit his 10-year-old daughter, to which Lynn said yes, she would send Tia straight over. John lived just a short distance away on Dalmain Close. Unbeknownst to Lynn, Tia was walking directly into danger. John had came up with an evil plan. He had developed an obsession with watching violent adult videos, which depicted torture and R-word. After watching it for so long, John fantasized about reenacting these things on a young girl, and that is when he lured Tia to his home and did the unthinkable, going on to act on these ferocious fantasies. Upon Tia entering the house, she would be drugged and then stripped naked apart from her pair of socks. Her hands would be bound behind her back, and for an extended amount of time, John would assault Tia. She was later found to have wounds from a broom handle. He would then go on to stab her several times in the abdomen and the neck, causing serious injuries to her internal organs, before wrapping a guitar string around her neck and strangling her to death. At 3:45 p.m, a chillingly calm John contacted emergency services, telling the operator on the other end of the phone, quote, "Hi, I would like to report a murder. My niece has just been murdered by me. I have just finished killing her now." When the operator asked him why he did it, he responded, quote, "Because I felt like it," before hanging up. Officers arrived at the Dalmain Close house only 2 minutes later, and they were met by John, who wasn't frantic or stressed or behaving in any sort of way. He was still extremely calm. He guided police up to a back bedroom where they would discover the body of deceased Tia, lay on the floor in a pool of her own blood. John was promptly arrested at the scene, and it didn't take long for neighbours to notice that the police were at his house. Now, Lynn only lived about 100 yards away, and so as soon as she noticed police at the house, she raced up and would be heard screaming, "Why? Why? Why?" After the murder of her daughter, Lynn would actually go missing for a couple of days before being found safe and well at a friend's house. At Manchester Crown Court, John Maiden would plead guilty to the murder and the R-word of his 12-year-old niece, Tia Rigg. And he had the book thrown at him. Because of the brutality of his crime, he was sentenced to a whole life order, meaning that he will spend the rest of his natural life behind bars. A review of the murder was carried out, and this showed that social services weren't at fault. Despite knowing Tia and her family and her situation, they stated that this murder couldn't have been predicted or prevented.